Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
Hey. Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom. I'm Callie, millennial number 1.
I'm Cole, millennial number 2.
Hi, Mom.
How are you guys?
Good.
Doing all right?
Yeah.
Doing all right this morning. How about you?
I'm doing well. I have an interesting topic to bring to you guys that I'm very curious as to your takes and thoughts on.
Okay. Let's get into it.
So imagine you're on Reddit, feeling all proud because you just dropped this thoughtful, well-reasoned take in the Change My View subreddit. And you're going back and forth with somebody else who's making solid counterpoints. Everybody's calm, everybody's listening and paying attention to each other and hearing this whole respectful disagreement thing that we've talked about, which is shocking for the internet, right? And then a few weeks later, you find out that the person that you were talking to isn't a person at all. It was a bot. A very polite, very persuasive AI bot, part of a research project that even Reddit didn't know about until well after the fact. So this actually happened. Researchers from the University of Zurich quietly released a bunch of AI agents into the Change My View subreddit to see how well they could persuade other humans, real humans. Some people were impressed. Others were furious, not because the bots were wrong necessarily, but because no one knew that they weren't human. There was no disclosure, no labels or warnings. It was just, surprise, you've been debating with a bot trained to sound smarter than all of us combined. Before we dive in too deep, I want to do a full disclosure from each of us really fast. I, Callie, am a Reddit lurker. I am more scrolling the drama, not really commenting or interacting with things. I'll up and down vote things on occasion, but I'm a lurker kind of girl when it comes to Reddit. Cole, I feel like you tend to be a little more hands-on and you've actually posted and interacted and engaged on Reddit.
I mean, on occasion. I don't spend very much time on Reddit. Like, the most time I spend on Reddit is when I can't find something that I'm looking for on like a video game. Like, hey, how do I finish X mission in Y game? But I don't really interact on Reddit all that much. I mean, I have made posts. I don't know that I've ever actually made posts. I mean, I've commented on a couple, but not very many. I'm definitely more of a lurker.
Okay. I asked the other day, I started a post the other day. I was like, is my sourdough starter totally ruined? Did I screw this up? And then Mom, I feel like you tend to be more of the mindset that Reddit is more emotionally charged version of Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah, that's probably accurate. Well, so let me just say, my first real depth with Reddit was the one about the manosphere. And that was just freaking scary.
Yeah.
And I will say it kind of confuses me because it always feels like it starts in the middle of a conversation. So I would keep looking for, wait, what was the original question? But I also want to say I had no idea about this Substack, about the argument part of it. The
subreddit, Change My View.
I had no idea that was there. And I find that absolutely fascinating. But I don't even know that I know how to get to it.
So that's the thing. Reddit is so wild. Like, I have one that I read often. Am I overreacting? AIO. And so it might be, hey, I saw these text messages on my boyfriend, husband, girlfriend's phone, and this is with a coworker. Am I overreacting here? Or my mother-in-law suggested this for my wedding, and this was my response. Am I overreacting? You know, Mom, you and I both read a book here a few weeks ago, a fiction book about, am I the asshole? Like, there are all kinds of subreddits about all kinds of weird things. So today we're getting into whether or not we think that bots should be allowed in places that are built for honest and open dialogue. Is it okay to experiment on the internet without telling anybody like the University of Zurich did? And the really big one, if a bot changes your mind, Does it actually count? Is it real?
I mean,
Well,
that's a big question.
Diving right in, Nicole.
I suppose it kind of depends. So first, let me start with my stance on should bots be included in these digital public spaces. I think that in general it's okay, but I also think that there needs to be disclosure. So just to kind of elaborate on this whole situation a little bit more, these bots from the University of Zurich research team were portraying characters.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were portraying a male rape victim who allegedly downplayed the effect of his assault, as a trauma counselor who specialized in abuse. Let's see.
There's a Black person, I think it's a Black man, who is opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh.
I mean, there's all kinds of different. Yeah, character is a perfect way to state it.
Here's my thing. The whole AI thing. And Cole, you kind of just briefly mentioned this. If it were identified, it makes all the difference in the world. And so it seems very simple to me that we could legislate that it has to be identified. Is this picture AI generated? Is this picture AI,
manipulated?
That gives people an opportunity to say, this may not be real. And so I think that's a whole different deal. But my take on this whole thing too is, the attorney at the university is livid. He's just, he's very...
The attorney at Reddit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. At Reddit is just really mad. But here's my thing on that. Would they be as mad if they knew?
No.
All right,
because that's one of the whole things here, is that not disclosing it is a breach of not only the subreddit rules, but also of just the terms of service of Reddit.
Yeah. The moral and ethical dilemma that this has caused.
Yeah. I mean, and I think experimenting on people unknowingly is in and of itself unethical. But I especially think lying to people in the course of that research and presenting your LLM as a rape victim, as someone who specializes in abuse, even as a Black man who is opposed to BLM, is wrong. And because just based on what I've read, that subreddit specifically allows AI generated content with the caveat that it is disclosed. And so if it were to say disclosure, this is a response generated by AI and based on X real person's real abuse counselor, real rape victim, this is what they have said. But coming in and posing as someone who has these real experiences, I think there's a lot of danger in something like that. And I mean, because the draft from these researchers essentially claims that these AI bots are 3 to 6 times more efficient at changing someone's opinion than a normal human.
With the backstory.
There was a 2023-ish, I think, research study done out of Purdue University that was looking at the accuracy of information that something like a ChatGPT, these language learning models offers and provides people, and something like 52% of the information that they give is wrong. I mean,
wait, say that again. 52% of the information from a AI chatbot is wrong? Oh.
I mean, I feel like it was you the other day. You had asked Google or ChatGPT like who the president was, and it was like, oh, it's Barack Obama or it's Joe Biden,
No,
whatever
that
it
one
was.
wasn't me, but I asked a really simple question, and I got a response back that Google didn't know what that was. I remember texting it to you, going, "I stumped the internet."
Yeah.
But it was something really simple.
Yeah,
I was asking who a person was, but it wasn't the president.
Yeah, but I've seen several that these learning language, learning language. Which one is it?
LLM.
A large language model.
Large language model. Thank you. I've seen several of these large language models that somebody will ask it a question. It's like, hey, who is the president? Something that is not subjective, not unclear, readily available out in the world, much less the internet. And it's like, oh, it's this person.
Oh.
What? No, it isn't. Whether you agree or disagree is completely irrelevant. That doesn't change the fact that Donald Trump is currently the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. I interact with the generative AI pretty regularly, and it is confined to in comparison to the internet as a whole, or even to just Reddit, a relatively small data set of things that are generally relatively well defined, and you can ask it a question and it uses that database, that data set, to generate an answer for you. And in my experience, it's probably wrong at least 50% of the time. And that's from, again, compared to the internet, an extremely small data set of well-defined terms, and it still gets it wrong more often than not.
It's crazy. I mean, but also, did you guys, I just watched it here within the last few months. There was a movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and technically it's Scarlett Johansson, and it's her voice, called Her. And it's all of these people, Amy Adams is in it. It's all of these people interacting and using AI and falling in love with them and having romantic relationships. We kind of talked about that a little bit in our previous AI chatbot episode, but how they have become these bots become jealous and develop feelings, quote unquote, for this person or that person. And at one point, Joaquin Phoenix he's a real boy. And he asks his kind of girlfriend how many other people she's seeing. And she's like 650 something. And he's like, how can you actually have feelings? How can they matter if they're dispersed amongst all of these people? How does that work?
Yeah.
So my next question kind of becomes, what does it mean for public discourse when AI bots are indistinguishable from humans? Like, if you sit here and say, hey, we will allow it as long as they're made clear that this is what it is. Mom, you called it legislating it. I remember here back in probably 2017, 16 or 17, there was a big push. I think CVS started it. CVS, like the drugstore, started it. That said, hey, we're having problems with all of these people and the self-worth of especially people like young women feeling inferior based on photoshopping. So we're going to put, I think they called it a beauty mark on any magazine or any advertisement that it has a photo of somebody who has been photoshopped. We're going to denote that's what's happening.
But again, I mean, that makes sense, because then you have the ability to look at it and go, this is computer generated.
Sure.
This isn't actual. But I mean, think about how much content that would affect.
Oh, yeah. Every single video that I upload to YouTube for us, I have to say, hey, does any part of this have AI generated content that says, hey, Cole, Callie, or Mecca said something that they didn't really say. You've changed it to say something that they didn't really say.
Yeah, good grief. Even my Wordle is doing this thing where you start to open it and it goes, we're checking to see if you're a real person.
Yeah. I mean, that's been around for a long time, just on the internet in general, and that is to prevent, not necessarily an LLM. I mean, yes, but bots or macros in general from flooding a website with interaction. Let's say, for example, you have posted an article on Substack, or you've published an article through whatever venue you're referring to. And this has been a problem on Twitter and on YouTube for quite some time. You can go out and buy bot farms and say, hey, I want my content to receive X number of views over this amount of time. And these macros will go in and essentially through a server, they will go and watch a video a certain number of times. They may even be able to leave a comment on the video, which will drive your ad revenue as a content creator
inflates
So that's
all
why
your
they're
numbers.
now having these checks to say, hey, are you a real person? So can you interact with this? And we can actually try and get an actual measure so that this person, we don't end up paying this person more than they deserve to pay because they went and spent $50 on a bot farm that will go and generate them 5,000 views or 10,000
Well, and I
views.
totally get that. And I get it. Where I see it most is if you're using a credit card, then it wants to verify that you're, a human using this credit card. I get that part. But when I'm opening my Wordle game and it says, we're checking to see if you're human, why would you bot Wordle?
Yeah, that may just be a more general kind of start page, like the first part of the route into New York Times, because they do have content that can be interacted and commented on. Not necessarily Wordle itself, but their articles. That's just a guess from me.
I don't know.
But
I don't know the answer to that. I think somehow we're going to have to be able to mark this and say, because I do think it's very easy to have an argument with somebody that you don't even know that they're not a real person.
So if a bot changes your mind, whether you know it's a bot or not, if it changes your mind, is it any more or less valid than a human doing it?
well, it depends.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So if a bot is using accurate information in the correct context and they're saying, hey, according to X, this happened. According to Y, this happened. According to Z, their opinion is this. That's one thing.
Right.
But if they are coming up with a false backstory saying, I am a black man who is opposed to Black Lives Matter and here's why, their reasoning is not real.
Dude.
I mean,
mine goes back. If they're trying to convince you that the world is flat and they have all of this data to support that, but it's not true. I mean, it's the same thing that Cole is saying. If you're using inaccurate data, or maybe inaccurate's not the word, false data, then it's a problem. I don't have as much of an issue with just AI because I do think that it has such a faster and larger access to information coming to me and saying, hey, let's add this. Let's add this to your thinking. I'm okay with that. But I don't need that to be manipulated by being lied to me that this is a person with X background showing me that.
Yeah, it's one thing if they say, here are my sources. It's another thing if they generate this narrative and essentially are pulling it out of thin air and are representing themselves as this being their own true life experience. That is wildly different because it's a story. It's a narrative. It's not real. And so like, I am not going to change my opinion on how physics works because of Star Wars. Like that
Right.
just doesn't make sense. And to me, this is the same thing. It's a fictional narrative that's being presented as someone else's reality when it's just not.
I mean, I think that's a perfect example. If somebody wants to convince you that Star Wars was real and that all of those planets and everything existed because that's the story with Star Wars, but that's all fiction, it just doesn't work.
It certainly makes me think. Go ahead.
And there are enough things that aren't as far out as, Star Wars is real. I mean, there are enough things that we face today. Are vaccines good or bad? So if you're using something along that line and you're misdirecting the population.
So this is almost a direct lift. Like what you're talking about right now is almost a direct lift of the storyline of the Book of Mormon. So in that play, one of the main characters, he's trying to share the story of Jesus' birth and the Bible and all of this and the Book of Mormon. And he starts using and piecing together. And then there was these Jedis trying to get his point across using all of these stories to you and I that are fictional stories. And he's teaching these people in this village in Africa or wherever he is, all of these stories. And they get all excited about it. Then the main people in the church come in and say, hey, we're so proud of you. We want to meet all of these people that you have converted to our religion. And the people from Africa start retelling.
It's not the story.
it's not anywhere close to the story. I mean, like I said, he's using Star Wars and he's using all of these different things and has convinced these people because they don't know any better that it's real. I mean, he's very much in trouble with the church, and you've embarrassed us and you've shamed us and all of this. And so I guess my kind of question becomes, is it just the lie that makes everything bad? When you say something that's not real, I mean, again, he converted them. They didn't know any better. And is it because he did it with a lie that's what makes it bad?
Did he, that's the thing. Did he really convert them? No.
Well, he converted them to
He
something.
converted them to his own version that is now something different.
Yeah.
If you as a missionary in a Christian church go out into these remote parts of the world and you start saying you're going to get into heaven if you do XYZ and you're going to get $1 million, and that's how you start converting people, that's a scam.
Okay, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this. But
Do it.
I mean, Christianity has walked that line many times.
Yeah.
So we're mad about AI doing it. At what point do we become mad at humans for doing it?
Yeah. Oh, you should be mad at people for doing it. And we do. People, I mean, we prosecute people for committing scams regularly, as we should.
Oh.
Now, not everybody gets caught, sure, but that doesn't make it not wrong.
Right. I mean, isn't that kind of the definition of integrity?
Yeah.
Mm. So
I find it interesting on this deal that they're not going to publish their study, that was their first reaction. Oh, we're not going to publish this study.
Well, there is a draft that has been, I guess not really published, but released at least, that I would like to read through at some point, just to maybe see if I can figure out where they're coming from. But
do y'all think that they'll really sue
Reddit? I would be shocked if they didn't.
Oh, really?
They have to be iron-fisted about this, or they lose a tremendous amount of credibility.
Yeah, Mom, you and I were having a conversation when you were here a few weeks ago. Reddit works because of the anonymity, because of the openness, because of their credibility. And so when people come in and start questioning that and putting that kind of up for debate, up for discussion, you can't trust it anymore.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like Cole said, they would completely lose their own credibility. And I think that it would be really tough to even start implementing the use of AI in, whether it's notated or not, in all of these subreddits saying, hey, this is here, to put all that information there, because that just isn't what Reddit is. It's so built on, I mean, you want to talk about social media is supposed to be uniting us and bringing us into a community. The Reddit community is very specific. I don't want to call it tight knit or close, but very specific. I'm allowed to come and ask these embarrassing questions and not be judged for them because I need support and I need help and I need understanding, because I know I'm anonymous. I know nobody's going to sit here and say, oh, that was Callie. She asked that question. Let's go shame her. It takes away that truly shameless portion of shameful questions, scary questions.
So is that element missing in Reddit, the shame part? Nobody's calling you toxic females or...
I think it still happens. Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what the upvote downvote thing is about. Like, you can get downvoted on your comment.
Your responses.
It isn't necessarily like a direct shame on you, but it does push your opinion further down so that it's less likely to be interacted with. It's harder to see. Okay. Unless you're going through and specifically reading every comment on any specific thread.
So would this have been different if it hadn't been Reddit, if it had been X?
I think so depending on, a lot of people would say that there's already a tremendous amount of bots that are interacting on X.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, ethically speaking, I think that it's the same. If you're generating this content, it should be disclosed that you're generating this content through AI. Now, this kind of brings up a point that I do want to at least touch on at some point, but there's a piece of an article that you sent us this week, Gig, talking about the dead internet theory, which is really interesting. I mean, I think it speculates that like 50 to 70% of the internet is interactions between bots at this point, which is mind-bogglingly high.
Yes.
But I want to take a step back for just a second here, because Callie, you were talking about, and we were talking about Reddit taking legal action and losing credibility. And I think that there is a need for detection, AI detection. The problem with that is that AI is advancing so rapidly at this point. I was watching a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they're talking about it's essentially doubling its capability every quarter, every 4 months. And there was another one that I saw that when I was reading this morning, that there are at least a couple of LLMs that are already passing the Turing test, which is monumental if you are someone who knows what that means. And the fact that that hasn't been broadcast and pushed out to be more well known and understood by our society is really kind of shocking, because I think one of the stats that I was reading this morning is one of these AI models is passing the Turing test at like 75%
Okay, I need you
success
to
rate.
explain that to me. What does that mean?
So the Turing test was a test that was developed by Alan Turing in like the 50s or 60s.
1949.
Yeah. And it's basically a baseline for if a machine can pass the Turing test, you can no longer distinguish between it and a real person in conversation.
A machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to that of a human.
Yeah. And so detection is needed, but detection is also getting much more difficult. Yeah. And so I don't know that detection is advancing at the same rate as these AI models is right now. And so at some point, if not already, our detection methods are going to get surpassed by these models, which is
obviously they already are.
Yeah, another huge question in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think in order for our society to be successful as a society, we have to have some kind of correction in that, because it is so far advanced and so far beyond that detection as it is.
Where do you get that correction?
Snowball already too far down the hill?
So what does that mean? Society's screwed?
You have such a juxtaposition between people who are creating AI, between believing that it's good and believing that it's bad. How do you get that correction in place?
There was a documentary here a few years ago. Trey mentioned it to me, called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix, and it's interviewing all of these various people, whether you're a software engineer or a coder or somebody who your whole career is based on having ethics and acting morally. All of these different people from different facets of various social media platforms, from Twitter to Facebook to LinkedIn, all of these different things, YouTube. And it's interviews with all of these people saying, this is not what we set out to do. This is not what was intended. I did this. I was a part of this. And I'm absolutely terrified of where it has gone from there.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous about this. I have decided to step back and step away and do something else. I don't want any part of this. This is dangerous. This is incredibly dangerous, and I am ashamed to have been a part of it. And so I feel like I have to do my own duty to society to come back and say, hey, be afraid of this. Think of this differently.
And yet you've got the other side that is saying we can make medical history exponentially using AI. So where is that's such a wide chasm. Yeah. And how do we protect society on this? I mean, the first thing is that you need to rely on the integrity of the producer.
Which in modern society is nearly impossible. I mean, we already see that the ethics of these researchers is compromised with this issue on Reddit, Change My View. So these people who are researching it not for an economic incentive are already ethically compromised. But a corporation, their duty is to their shareholders. Their duty is like they are good at one thing and one thing only, and that is generating income. That is what they are designed for. So they don't have any incentive to pump the brakes and slow down until it's too late.
So you asked kind of what the answer is, and we have said it on this podcast, on dozens of occasions at this point. The answer to this problem, not specific to AI or whatever, but the answer to whatever problem it is that we're talking about is education. And so that makes me think of, Mom, you sent an article here several years ago now about Finland teaching children in all of their elementary schools to spot disinformation and to spot fake news and what that looks like and what that means. And so I'm going to kind of lean back on that again. I think that our only hope for surviving this with any kind of positive result and outcome is education, is sitting down and saying, hey, I know what it feels like to be rejected, because AI isn't going to teach me that. I need to learn this. I need to do this. And I was just sitting here looking up that specific article and things, and I can link that in the show notes, but it brought up a bunch of other things about why Finland is #1 in the world for their education and what that means and what that looks like. And the first thing that comes up from educations.com is talking about the main reason that they're #1 is because they avoid, like the plague, standardized testing. We are teaching to the individual. We are teaching to their specific performance that is required for them to be productive members of society, rather than does everybody know this same answer to this same question?
Yeah, they're
And
teaching monkeys to climb trees and teaching fish how to swim. They're not judging monkeys on their ability to swim and judging fish on their ability to climb trees.
Yeah.
And isn't Finland in if not the top 3 of happiest in the world
Yes.
population?
Yes.
So I guess that's a refute to that classic saying that ignorance is bliss.
Amen.
I don't think ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is ignorance.
I think that the only chance we have, the only hope that we have to surviving any of this is educating ourselves and educating the people around us. Do you see any benefits? Do you see any positives from these bots being released into Reddit?
I think it's a huge warning.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge red flag that at least is a little bit more obvious now. I think I think the biggest benefit is that, hey, now we know this is a threat. I don't know that that was really the intention of the study. Maybe it was, but
you have a comment that a quote that AI isn't going to destroy humanity. It's going to make humanity destroy itself.
I don't know that we even need AI for that, but I certainly think it's capable of speeding it along.
Yes. It just kind of made me go,
yeah, it does kind of take your breath away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do believe that the more we leave this unchecked, like, we have to be having these conversations. We have to be talking about this, raising those flags, because if nobody talks about it, then nothing gets done. If nothing gets done, we continue to further become out of reach of ever being able to recover from it.
Yeah. Well, and here I am agreeing with Cole again, but my fear is our education system is not designed to even alert us to this, because we keep talking about education, but that education needs to start, like you say, in Finland, teaching small children how to identify this and how to react to it. And we're not doing that. And so as much as I wish it were true, the 3 of us having this conversation isn't going to reach enough people to
be
generate.
fair, we're not the only ones having this conversation. This is pretty common in public discourse right now. But even so, even if you're listening to a 4-hour podcast, it's so hard to get all of the pertinent information that you would need to, you're aware of it, but how do you identify this at this point? If you're talking about language models that are at this point indistinguishable from the intelligence of another human, that are 3 to 6 times more proficient at persuading people than the average person is.
Do you think that AI is capable of being persuasive without being manipulative?
I think persuasion in and of itself is manipulation.
I don't know that I disagree with you there.
And I think it goes back to the same thing that I was talking about earlier. If it's like, hey, this is AI generated content, and here are sources as to why this AI has generated this particular viewpoint, then that, I think, is the least manipulative way to go about it. But if you have AI that are again, indistinguishable from interacting with a human being on the internet, and they're using these false narratives.
That's at the top of the scale.
Right now, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's just really kind of crazy. If bots were trained and notated, it's notated in whatever it is that you're reading. These bots are trained to be persuasive and to make good arguments, to win arguments, if you will, and they're successful in that. Is that the same as helping people understand different perspectives? If you know that going into it, this is a bot, this is not necessarily real, does that count still?
I mean, it could, but on the other side,
I think it really depends on the content that they're generating and if it's based in reality or if it's just made up.
Yeah.
So I think this would be almost impossible to legislate, particularly on a global scale at this point. But I mean, if you go and you take a look at a bunch of the movies from, I mean, all the way from like the 70s up through now, like iRobot is kind of the first one that I think of, but there are dozens, if not hundreds of movies that have a similar concept talking about the laws of robotics. In this case, I feel like it is probably necessary that we require an implementation, some string of code in these large language models that say, hey, you cannot lie to people. You cannot intentionally, and that's the really hard part.
That's from perspective.
Well, yes. And so, and that's what makes this even harder. Like you cannot lie to people, but a lie isn't necessarily from perspective. Like you could say generating a false narrative using made up information, even if it's based on real data, is a lie. You can program that into one of these models. You can say you cannot intentionally cause harm. What are the laws of robotics here?
Okay, let me just back you up there. I got one subject that goes to this. Immigrants are dangerous and bad and need to be kicked out of America. Or the other side is immigrants add to, and contribute to America's wealth and success. Which one's right?
Well, two things can be true at the same time.
I think that would have to first be applied, like your logical, I think would have to first be applied to humans. I think it would have to be applied to humans before we could apply it. So, and I'm going to use Mom's kind of immigrant argument here for a little bit. If we come out and say, hey, it's on the internet, it must be true. If we come out and say, hey, we have to be truthful and realistic, and Cole, you were making this argument the other day. If somebody believes it, that doesn't make it untrue. That's still true for them. That's still a fact for them. Donald Trump coming out saying they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. If that's out there in the world, does that make it true? And so then AI picks it up and says, oh, well, the president of the United States said they're eating the cats. So immigrants, therefore, are eating cats and dogs, and therefore they're bad. I don't think that you can legislate morality.
Right. You can't.
That's true.
And I think that makes this a lot harder, particularly with entities that are now indistinguishable from humans. But the three laws of robotics are: a robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Who made those laws?
That sounds very Star Wars-y to me.
Yeah. Are a set of rules, primarily fictional, created by Isaac Asimov to govern the behavior of robots in his science fiction stories.
So they're not necessarily quote unquote real laws, therefore enforceable. And so nobody can hold anybody to account. Like, don't get me wrong. I totally agree with you. We as a society can come together and say, hey, this is the reason in which we're going to implement this. These are the rules in which we're going to live by, and that needs to be done. Yes. But until that's actually done, it doesn't exist. It's kind of the wild West.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm saying right now is that these are not in place. And I think they probably should be for this reason.
Yeah. You know, there was a poll taken here. It was done with like the 100 days of Trump being in office for his second term and all of this, like, and it was done for all of these different Americans. What are your top priorities? What are you most afraid of? I'm most afraid of immigration. I'm most worried about the economy. I'm most worried about this, and this, and this. And oddly enough, AI was one of the answers on there, and it was one of the lowest things. And gosh, y'all, maybe this is my privilege showing, but should it really be that low?
I don't think so.
Especially if you're sitting here talking about their reach and how their
advancement
rate of advancement is doubling as fast as it is. Like we don't have time to not be worried about this. Do I want to be worried about it? No. Do I want this to be an issue? No. That doesn't make it not one.
Okay, but I'm going to circle back around. Do you not think that was part of what the University of Switzerland
Zurich
had in mind? Zurich? Details. Just
AI's
details.
talking to me.
semantics.
Semantics. I mean, the truth of that is that there's a lesson to be learned by what they did.
Yes, that is true, but
are we willing to learn it?
I think we have to learn it.
I need to think of a less extreme example here. If I create an algorithm that is capable of falsifying voter counts in an election, and my sole intention of doing that, if I enact it in a live election and utilize it, and then come out and publish the results afterwards and say, I manipulated this election to put X candidate in this position just to show you that this is dangerous and it can be done. Does that make what I did okay? I don't think so. I think what you do is...
Some people would say, if my candidate won, then it's okay.
And you're not wrong on that. And I think that in and of itself is a problem.
Yeah.
So raising a red flag by being a red flag, I don't think is the way to go about it.
It doesn't look like it's going to work out for them very well.
And I don't know, maybe they'll see themselves as martyrs, but...
Who is it going to work out well for, though?
Good question.
It's the scary part to me, because I don't see any winners in this. Not long term.
So to segue against that, let's talk about, because I was very surprised at these, there was a survey done and 17% of people are afraid of not being polite to AI because they think that there will be a revolt.
So here's my question for the two of you. When you are using AI in whatever capacity, whether that is on your phone, whether that is I call her Bridget so I don't set her off, the Amazon girl, or the one for Apple, or the one for Google, or any of these different chat GPT, do you use manners when interacting with them? Do you say please? Do you please set a timer? Please do this.
You did, Carl?
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's just ingrained in me. Like when I ask for things, you say please and you say thank you.
Right.
That's not because it's an AI and I'm afraid of a robot uprising.
Yeah.
I mean, every once in a while when I say thank you after I've asked Google AI something or after I've asked Alexa for something, I'm like, well, at least if there is.
And she's talking to you. Mm-hmm. That's why I didn't say her name.
Like, I forget that there's one in here. But
so I'm going to say
I feel like such a mean girl. I changed her name so I can talk shit about her.
I don't specifically say please and thank you, although I did yesterday. I asked something, and just because we kind of started this conversation, I said thank you, and the response I got back was so very sweet and kind, and just let me know how I can help you. But mine is not because I'm afraid of a revolt. Mine is, I'm asking you a question. You are your computer. I'm asking you a question, and I don't really owe you politeness. I mean, it's not that I just don't.
So I see what you're saying.
How many ounces are in a cup? Maybe if I would say thanks for that, but it wouldn't be because I was scared or worried.
I think that the part for me, I think like Cole said, I am always interacting with them with manners and with kindness because it's so deeply ingrained in me. There is probably, if I'm really honest, a part of me that's like, oh, well, if I'm polite, then if something were to ever shit hits the fan, they'll be nicer to me than that person who didn't say please and thank you every single time. But also the people who are putting them together encourage those manners to be had so that it keeps you and I more humane, because we are creatures of habit. If I stop saying thank you every time I ask a question and get an answer from Bridget, and then I come and ask you a question, does my brain still automatically say, oh, thank you for answering that for me? Or have I dehumanized myself and therefore you just out of habit?
Feeling like I taught y'all better than I learned.
I think you're right. That certainly
Percent.
sounds like it.
100%. I have to correct you and Dad
100%.
all the time on please and thank you.
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time.
Yeah. But isn't that
Fred, go do
kind
X,
of,
please.
yeah.
All the daily.
Isn't that kind of the part of parenting that is the most rewarding? Like, you get to teach your kids better and you get to provide for your kids better or different than what you received. Like, if we
I'm
can
not sure
all,
it fits with this deal. I think I'm just.
oh, so you learned manners, you were taught manners, and then you chose to ignore them,
I mean,
throw
it
them
kinda
out the window.
Kind of sounds like it. I'm gonna have to work on this.
Yeah.
So one of these other articles, I'd asked something about this on Thread, and somebody responded to me with an article that was about a tweet from Sam Altman, being the
OpenAI.
CEO
of
or
OpenAI.
whatever, the founder of OpenAI. The tweet that he responded to said something about, I wonder how much money it costs these companies to say thank you or to say you're welcome when you say thank you. Are they mad? Are they annoyed that they're having to spend extra money for all of their tools having to be polite back and to respond in kind? And he responded, he was like, this cost us millions of dollars and it's money well spent. And that they would do it again. They're happy to do it because in our actual primate brains as humans, it changes the way that we see each other and we see ourselves for the better. It benefits us in the long term to maintain that level of decorum, to maintain those manners and all of that. If he has this little tiny part of it and it cost him $1 million or X% of his profit, that it's worth it. That's a priority.
Catch more flies
still.
with honey.
Absolutely. And I think that that's so interesting and neat.
Yeah. I was shocked by his response, just that he was willing to spend that money.
You know, I asked a question the other day in our Blame Millennial article. What does each generation prioritize? I would love to put some more thought into that. And so I think that, you know, when you talk about voting with your dollars, I'm not going to go to Target because they did this. I'm not going to go to Chick-fil-A because they're anti-abortion or they're opposed to all of these things due to their quote unquote Christian values and all of this. You vote with your dollars. And so I think that this is such an opportunity for you to kind of do that same thing, to apply that same logic to companies like OpenAI and say, hey, they're prioritizing the need and desire for us to maintain our humanity and our decorum. So when I'm using those tools, I'm going to use theirs because I appreciate their priorities. They align with mine, kind of thing.
Okay, I just want to highlight this because I'm looking at that article right now and it's showing Sam Altman's reply. Because the first is, I wonder how much money OpenAI has lost in electricity costs from people saying please and thank you to their models. And Sam Altman responds, and to me, this is kind of dark, particularly for someone involved in the field that he is involved in. Tens of millions of dollars well spent. You never know.
Creepy.
Yes.
But also, well spent is the important part for me there. He's happy to do it. He's happy to spend it on please and thank you. And I appreciate that.
But with the you never know part, I take that a lot differently than, oh, it's because it's good for humans to keep that in their minds. It's because, hey, it's good that we're nice to these robots because they're about to be our overlords.
Yeah. I say, you didn't think there was going to be a revolt and now you're second guessing yourself, huh?
I mean, Sam Altman sure seems to be. I mean, maybe he's being facetious here.
Maybe.
And maybe there's some further clarification that I just haven't got to yet. But to me, that's a dark response.
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
So what if they're polite back?
Lots of people are annoyed.
I think that's great.
I agree.
This is kind of it's funny that you mentioned that because Callie posted another link in here for us to read this week that talks about people being mad about ChatGPT being so overly positive, so overtly positive.
The biggest suck up I've ever met.
Yeah. Like, be nice to me. That's great for me personally. Like,
Yeah.
be
Who
nice to
doesn't
me.
want that?
Yeah. Why? I think that is a cultural thing that is largely impacted regionally. I think that we, being from the South, expect that in our interactions. I don't think that all regional cultures do.
That's interesting. Yeah. I could see that.
But
because I'm not offended by that in any way.
Yeah.
I mean, ChatGPT
I don't think people are offended.
Says,
I think they're annoyed by it.
Yeah. I mean, it always says, can I help you, further this, or do you want me to explain this? Can we delve into this? And I feel completely at ease of saying, no, I'm fine. I got what I wanted. That was the answer that I was looking for, and you gave it to me. We're good. And I
Thank
can go on. That's when I wrote, thank you. And it came back and it said, you're so very welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not annoyed by that, but maybe it is regional.
Yep. Maybe so. There was in one of these, there's a study and it was comparing the United States to the UK. Almost 70% of people are polite to AI when interacting with it. The survey of more than 1,000 people found that roughly 1 in 2 people use AI. 51% of surveyed people in the US and 45% in the UK. In the US, 67% of people who use AI are polite to it, while in the UK, 71% are polite. And it talks
users,
about,
but more polite users.
Yes. Well, this is the majority of people and an increase of 3 and 11% respectively in each region compared to a previous running of the survey 3 months prior. The data shows that blunt and quick demands are the big reason why people forget to say thank you. Diving into the U.S. stats specifically, of the 67% of people surveyed who said they're always polite to AI, 82% said that they do so simply because it's nice to say please and thank you, regardless of you're speaking to AI or a human. The remaining 18% of this group said that they're polite in case there's ever an AI uprising, banking on their previous politeness as a means of survival.
I'm just telling you that never crosses my mind.
I think that is foolish in and of itself, to be perfectly honest with you. I said please and thank you every time I ask you to set a timer for me. Please don't kill me.
You never know.
All right, Sam. You never know.
You never know. But that's, again, if he's willing to pay the price for the additional electricity and everything to manage that and to proliferate that, then what is the negative to being polite back?
Well, I don't think there's a negative to being polite. There's a negative to not being polite.
Certainly could be.
Possible negative.
It's less efficient is the negative to being polite back is what?
It's less efficient in the short term.
I mean, I just feel like, again, if I say how many ounces, are in a quart, and Bridget responds to that, then I'm done. I don't feel like I need to say, you're the best, Bridget.
Well, you don't have to say you're the best. You can say thank you.
If you asked me,
right,
hey, would you look this up for me? And I did and gave you an answer, you would say thank you to me.
I would say thank you. Yeah, despite what you think, I would say thank you to that. And I have to say, one of my favorite things was when Amazon said, would you like to thank your driver? I love doing that. Mm-hmm. It was just fun to me to be able to say, oh, my driver, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to use this kind of as a segue. How much R&D, how much money do you think Amazon had to employ to create a piece of their system that allows you to thank your delivery driver?
No, I don't have any idea.
I bet it was a lot.
Yeah. I bet it's less than you think.
It's probably less than I think. It probably was still not an insubstantial amount of capital to plug that into their already existing system. But where I'm going with this is the amount of resources that are being dedicated to this right now. I heard a really interesting idea. It was on a podcast, but I don't remember which one. But it's talking about like Apple and Meta and Amazon and OpenAI and all of these tech companies are essentially almost in the process of converting a big portion of their assets and their resources into changing from specifically tech research companies into being energy companies, just so that they can generate enough electricity to power their research for these large language models and computational units, because everything right now is about the ability to compute, and that compute is heavily reliant on
Energy.
on energy. And so at least 2 or 3 of them right now are building nuclear power plant facilities with multiple reactors, just so that they can hope that they have enough power moving forward to continue doing what they're doing, which is nuts for Amazon to be building nuclear reactors. And also, I think it says something about I don't think nonchalance is the right word here, because I don't think it accurately describes it, but maybe our ignorance to the amount of energy that our society needs and uses and is
Consumes.
currently capable of producing, because it's staggering and we are falling behind further and further every day.
I will say there's a book that's on my to be read list that was written by our guy Scott Galloway, called The Four: The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. It's written a few years ago now, but it's talking about how they got here, what they had to do to get here, and all of the different pieces that I'm very, very curious about.
Yeah. I'd like to read that one too. We'll look at that one.
Yeah,
You should
I've
put
been
that
listening
one in
to a
our
lot of
notes.
Professor G podcasts this last week or two, so that's probably who I heard it from.
Yeah, he's fascinating.
He argues that their success lies not just in their technology, but in their ability to target specific emotional needs, brain, heart, or genitals, to drive user engagement and loyalty.
Yeah.
And here I am pledging myself to OpenAI because they are willing to pay the price for us saying please and thank you. But I'll also say my favorite part of ordering a pizza, which is not AI, is we use Domino's where we live. And after you order it, it's like, hey, send a note of encouragement to your team who's building your pizza. And I want to know how it works. Like, does it print out on the receipt, or does it go off in the kitchen? Like, Callie says,
that'd be
you're
fun.
the best. Like, that would be really fun. I'd be curious to know how it works.
That'd be fun. You should text them and ask them.
Yeah. I'm sure
how it
there's a
works.
Reddit thread from somebody who's worked in Domino's who is explaining
Well,
it to
there
me.
you go. There's always
All
that way
right,
too.
so I want to talk about our weird thought for this week, and
I'm so anxious.
it's going to go from dark to darker.
Yeah.
So I need one of you to maybe, you are probably more well read on this subject, because I basically read the headline or the tagline and was immediately furious.
Yeah. So a Army veteran, 37 years old, I think, was shot and killed in a road rage accident
In Arizona, Chandler,
in
Arizona.
Arizona. And his sister and brother-in-law created an AI of him for the sentencing section of the trial.
They did it with the intention of sharing it with their nieces and nephews because they all wanted to have one more visit with Uncle Chris.
So they used him and his voice and even aged him over the process of this to address. And the thing that I liked about it that Cole just flew right over was that there was a message of forgiveness, that he wanted the
I
person
believe
to...
in forgiveness and a God who forgives. I
Yes.
always have and still do, the AI version of Mr. Pelkey says.
And so it was used in the trial, and the judge actually, the prosecution had asked for 10 and a half years, and the judge gave a year additional to
An
that
11.5-year
after
sentence.
hearing the AI. And so Cole's take on that was just mind blown totally, because they generated this AI of the victim to use in court.
Precedent that it sets is absolutely horrifying.
Incredibly
Even
scary.
if in this instance they attempted to use it in a positive manner, it still sets the precedent to use it the other way.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just in the sentencing portion, not in the actual trial itself, the implications of that are, look, our legal system has enough problems as it is right now. we don't need this.
No. And like we talked about earlier, there's no laws in place for how to work this. There's no laws in place as to what is and isn't acceptable. There's no kind of legality to what it is that you could or could not make them say. I mean, like you said, Cole, they use this in a quote unquote positive manner to offer forgiveness to this guy. But at the same time, what if they started having him tell fart jokes? Or, I mean, like it could be anything. You're going to hell and you're going to do this and you're the worst person in the world. They could have made him say anything. Potatoes are purple.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
I get generating it for his nieces and nephews to have an opportunity to say goodbye in a manner that is easier for them.
Yeah. To be used in any official capacity in a courtroom.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I totally get his sister and her grieving process and how that helps. I mean, I can tell you that when my brother-in-law passed away, as we went through the pictures of his life, that was helpful in the grieving process. So I understand that from her perspective. I get that 100%. And Cole, I don't disagree with you that this is, I'm thankful that it was in the sentencing and not used as part of the trial. But I understand your aversion to this, for sure.
And maybe there's some sort of context that I am missing. Maybe that is part of his sentence, is having to witness this AI forgive him. That's a little bit different.
I mean, but that doesn't have to be at the sentencing. He can do that from his jail cell afterwards, when all of the people who have the possibility to change the outcome, those ramifications are gone, not in play.
Oh God. Can you imagine the impact of having, killed a child? Think about some of these school shooters, and if they had to face those children in a setting like this with AI from each of those children speaking, what it would mean.
But you guys, that's exactly what we were talking about a minute ago. Persuasion and manipulation are two sides of the same coin.
Semantics, as Cole would say.
Yeah, I think that it really is. I mean, do I think that there is any positive or benefit of children being killed in a school shooting? Absolutely not. Do I think that we as a society are doing enough to combat that? Absolutely not. But to then take and put together something that these children didn't say to be used against somebody else, it doesn't matter who it is, to be used against the principal, to be used against the shooter themselves, to be used against the police force. Think of Uvalde and things like that. That's nothing but manipulation. That's all it is. And I am not saying that those kids don't deserve more and didn't deserve better. They absolutely did. But to sit here and benefit or harness off of their death using their likeness, I'm out, y'all. I can't find any positive of using that in a court of law.
Well, that was it. Our weird thoughts are normally a little bit more fun than that.
Yeah, different kinds of crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, give me something funny. I want a good story.
All right, so our good news story this week, this may be a little bit of a controversial take, but there's been a lot going around the internet the last couple of weeks about gorillas. And if 100 men would be able to take a single silverback gorilla in a fight. And I think that I am probably on the opposite side of most people on this. One, yes, 100 unarmed men could eventually take down one silverback gorilla. I've seen some AI renderings and some people talking about this. I think people are largely overestimating a silverback gorilla in size, strength, and stamina. Don't get me wrong. Gorillas are really strong, extremely strong, and they are not small by any means, but they are not 12 feet tall, and they cannot pick up and throw 15 dudes at a time.
This is not King Kong.
Yeah, it's not King Kong. It's a normal silverback gorilla. I would say the average silverback gorilla is probably between 300 and 400 pounds, 300 to 430.
Pretty close.
So,
and stand between 5 feet and 6 feet tall.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big guy, and they are stronger than a singular human being, for sure. They're extremely strong. And they do have fangs. But you also have to understand, 100 dudes is a lot of dudes, and gorillas still have to rely on this thing called stamina.
Yeah.
Which they are not really well known for.
Okay.
I just went and looked up the NFL player who most closely matches that description is a guy who plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers named Desmond Watson, and he is 460 pounds and 6'6". He is currently the heaviest player in the NFL. And I'm not judging his size, but just to put that into perspective, there are still humans that are this size.
Yeah.
Well, that could change the whole thing. Could you take 100, 300-pound men versus 100-pound men?
Well, I think
And
the
one
stipulation is that it would be a spectrum across
100 dudes. Random ass dudes.
Like if it was
Okay, but the
100
good
average
answer-
dudes.
The good answer that we liked this week.
Anyways, yeah, I think the best answer that has been provided to this question so far has come from Robbie Irwin, which I must say is just the spitting image of his father. And whenever I see him on the internet, Robbie is absolutely a delight. He's just the nicest kid. But
So I do think you need to give a little bit more details in case somebody's not super familiar.
Robbie Irwin is Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter's son, who is kind of working with his mom and sister still in the same capacity as a conservationist to kind of help protect protected species and educate people on those species.
Yeah, wildlife conservation in
A
general.
wildlife conservationist, yes. So Robbie posted this week in a response, and General Irwin capacity just showed so much kindness and compassion and said, you know, it's a good question. It's an interesting question, but gorillas are usually pretty chill and they kind of just keep to themselves most of the time. And yeah, they may fight you if threatened, but why are we talking about fighting endangered species? Why can't we talk about saving endangered species? Can we just be nice to the gorillas and let them do their thing, and then they can let us do our thing? And I think that that's probably the best response to could 100 men take on 100 gorillas is why are we fighting gorillas?
Yeah.
So shout out to Robbie. Shout out to Steve. You did a good job. And shout out to Terry too, because obviously she's raising those kids right, because they just couldn't be sweeter.
Oh, yeah. So no matter where you stand, let's not fight gorillas.
Let's
But
leave
let's
the
fight
gorillas
AI.
alone.
Whoa. Control AI.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. All right, you two. Love ya.
Love you guys.
Too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.